Next question. Jamie from Morganton. Where's Morganton?
Well, according to what state you're in, it could be North, it could be Kentucky, it could be North Carolina, it could be Indiana.
Hmm?
There's a lot of Morgantons out there, or Morgantowns, yeah.
Does Dutch have any good stories or memories of Skandor Akbar? Devastation Inc. seems to be a forgotten stable. Have we ever talked about Skandor Akbar here?
No, but I used to live with him. We we were roommates, and that Skandor. Well, let me tell you, when I started wrestling, my buddy Doug, nobody remembers him now, but he was about 400 pounds and about 6'5", 6'6". And they put a mask on him in Atlanta. Tom Ernesto did, the assassin, and was using him down there as, generic Mr. X or X. And Tom Ernesto was the booker. And on Mondays, this don't have anything to do with Skandor, but I'll tell you how I got with Skandor. We had two towns, was Augusta, Georgia, and Valdosta, Georgia. two different cities in Georgia. We ran 2 nights, 2 towns a night. And I was in Georgia, and Doug, my friend, was in Valdosta. So I said, I'll see you tomorrow. He said, okay. So I left to go to Augusta. He left to go to Valdosta. And Valdosta is a long way. It's way down. You got to get on, you go to an I-75, then you get on something else or another interstate. I got to Augusta, and somebody come to get me in the dressing room. They said, you got a call up here at the office. Now, you don't get calls like that in wrestling. Something big had happened. And I got down there to the office, and they said, I picked the phone up, and it was Tom Ernesto. And he said, well, I don't know how to tell you this. But he says, he called him Kissy, Doug Scoggins. He was on his way to Valdosta. He had an accident, and he got killed. And I had known him before. I'd known him like 4 years before, or 5 years before I got to Atlanta, Georgia. Said he had an accident and he got killed. So now I got to go back that night, knowing he's never coming back in that apartment. And it was an odd feeling. And I had just seen him that afternoon, but that's what life does to you. So, and after I went to his funeral, me and Tom and Jody Hamilton and all the wrestlers went to his funeral. It was in Elberton, Georgia. That's where he was from. And we all went up there to the funeral. So then you got to go back to work. So when I went back, and then the question is about Skandor Akbar.
Mm-hmm.
He came in and he was looking for a place to stay, and he come and asked me. He says, he told me he was sorry about my friend, and he says, are you sharing your apartment? And I had another bed. I mean, the apartment was basically still in Doug's name. I was just staying there and sharing the rent. The rent was, you know what the rent was back then?
Go on.
$175 a month, fully furnished. That's with the refrigerator, stove, beds, couches. Didn't have a TV, table, dining table, and that's how much it was. They were charging. Oh yeah, I said, I let Skandor stay in my apartment for, I don't know, whatever he was going to be there. And we split the rent. So I was paying like $85 a month. He was paying $85 a month. Oh, that, power included, water included. It was a great deal. But I learned more from that guy, just riding with him and listening to him. And he's funny as hell anyway. And he'd always have a cigar. He said, "Oh, yeah." And he'd always show me his money. He'd always open up like his billfold, and he'd show me nothing but $100 bills. So, but he taught me a lot about wrestling because he would go with me, and we would talk wrestling history on the way down. But on the way back, he was like having a tutor that went with you, because he would go out every night. He would watch my match, and then we would, going back that night, he would critique me on what I did right, what I did wrong, take more time, slow down a little bit. But at the time, I was in a program with Ted Oates, and we were two young guys. We were just flying all over the ring. Of course, his main thing is slow down. Let the people, let it breathe, he called it. Let it breathe. But we were too stupid to let it breathe. No, we didn't want to let it breathe. We just kept flying around. And finally, he just said, "Okay, do what you want. People seem to be enjoying it." So, but he would, and he gave me a lot of history about wrestling, when he started, and great guy. I really appreciated Skandor a lot. He's passed away now, right?
Yeah. He
good guy.
He sort of basically retires almost from full-time wrestling by the end of the 1970s, I guess, now. And then, it would transition into a manager, get back in the ring throughout the 80s, as and when, in Dallas and Mid-South and wherever else he was needed. But how was he as a manager? Because I don't know too much about him, but I think he's one of those, he's one of those unsung heroes, really.
Skandor Akbar is a Islamic name, I think. And he wore the big, the thing and the thing on the head. I don't know what they call that, but he was like an Arab, like a Muslim. And he would take that to the ring, and he wasn't really Muslim. I guess he was Christian, but he would say some things over something, and all the people hated him. And one reason he wore that shawl, or whatever you call that, was the same reason I heard that Roddy Piper wore his leather jacket, to keep knives. It was maybe deflect the knives or some stuff, or he would have something over his arms, he could block it. But they didn't like him at all. And I think he was in Mid-South when I went there. I went there in the mid-'80s. I think Skandor Akbar, didn't he manage Kamala?
He managed Kareem Muhammad, Kamala. Who else was he with? Yeah, those two. But yeah, he did manage Kamala. He also wrestled Jim Duggan in a singles match in the Municipal Auditorium in Shreveport, Louisiana in '85.
That Shreveport Auditorium, I was really happy to actually having worked in there. I wonder, is that building still standing? That's when the original Grand Ole Opry started. It was called the Louisiana Hayride. They had a show there that went for years and years and years from the stage of Shreveport Auditorium called the Louisiana Hayride, which was a forerunner to the Grand Ole Opry. And they would have and it was a radio show late at night too. But an old building.
I'll tell you exactly how old it was. 1929 it was built, 95 years old, and in 2008 designated a National Historical Landmark.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Still going strong.
Really?
Yeah.
I enjoyed being in that building, and I was glad that I can say that I worked inside that building. I never worked inside the old Opry in Nashville, but it was a lot bigger than the Louisiana Hayride in Shreveport. But it was old, and I've been inside the building, but very historical.